私のささやきを聞いて Welcome back to the fire. Whispers of the Scribe presents 3 horror stories compilation. 第1話 Story 1 The Night Guard at the School.
It's gone.
This happened to me back in 1997 when I was working as a night security guard at an old public high school just outside the city. It was summer break. The classrooms were empty, and most of the lights were kept off to save power. The place always felt strange after dark. Too quiet, too wide. My shift started at 10 and ended at 6. I had a small office beside the cafeteria where the CCTV monitors were. The system was old, with flickering gray screens and green lines that never stayed still. The radio on my belt worked most nights, though sometimes I'd hear faint voices through static from the other end of the campus. There was another guard on duty that night, but he was stationed at the front entrance. The school grounds were wide, with parking lots and fields between us. His post was almost 2 blocks away from the main building. So even though we shared the same radio channel, it felt like we were working in 2 different worlds. If something happened inside, he wouldn't hear it unless I called for help. The janitors usually left around 11. Once they were gone, it was just me. The rain had started early that night. Steady, soft, but loud enough to echo through the metal roof. I didn't mind the rain. It masked the small noises buildings make when they settle. The only part of the school I didn't like was the West Wing. It was built in the 1900s, long before the rest of the campus. The floors were wood instead of tile, and the hallway lights buzzed like dying bees. Most guards didn't walk that way unless they had to. I thought it was just nerves, until that night, around midnight, I did my usual round. Every classroom door was locked. The library lights were out. I passed the gym, and the air smelled like dust and rubber. When I got to the West Wing, I saw one door open halfway, room 2A. That room was supposed to be closed for years. The sign on the door said storage. I called on the radio, asking if the janitors had gone back for something, but no one answered. Just static. I stepped inside with my flashlight. The air felt colder. I could smell old wood and damp chalk. There were stacked desks, boxes, a teacher's table covered with plastic. Everything was still, except for a slow creak from the back of the room, like someone shifting their weight. I aimed the flashlight toward the noise. Nothing there. I walked deeper, my boots soft on the wooden floor. When I turned to leave, the door was swinging slightly even though no wind was coming through. I closed it and left. Back at the monitors, I watched that hallway. The screen showed the empty door. After a minute, I saw movement. A small figure standing just outside room 2A. I thought it was the camera glitching, but when the lights flickered, the figure was still there. It looked like a student, short, wearing what seemed like a uniform. The head was tilted forward, hair hanging down. I leaned closer to the screen, trying to see the face, but grew louder until it cracked like whispering. I dropped the radio and picked it up again, but it went quiet. I don't want to sound like a snitch, but the guard at the front gate had a habit of dozing off during his shift. Sometimes I'd even wander off to the small store across the road without telling anyone. It was not my business to report him, and most nights it didn't matter. But sitting there with the radio dead silent, I wished he was actually at his post for once. I switched to the camera view for the next haul, and the figure was gone. I told myself it was lighting, or maybe an old recording glitch. But then I saw the door to room 2A slowly close by itself. I took my flashlight and went back. The hallway felt longer than before. The lights above me blinked once, and the buzzing grew louder. When I reached the door, it was shut tight. I tried the knob. It was ice cold. I knocked once. The sound echoed through the room like it was empty. Then I heard a faint voice on the other side, just a few words. Soft and dry, like a girl saying please. I stepped back. I didn't open it. I went straight to the security room. I didn't sit. I just stood and stared at the monitors. I tried calling on the radio again, but it was only static. I checked the channel, tapped the side, even switched the frequency, but nothing changed. A second later, the power light blinked once and went out completely. It was strange, because I had just put in freshly charged batteries before the shift. The radio had never done that before. A few minutes later, I saw something wet on the floor by the West Hall camera. Small footprints. They appeared one by one, leading toward room 2A. Then they stopped. My heart was pounding. I watched as the classroom door opened again. The light inside flickered, and for half a second, I saw someone standing there, hair down, soaked uniform, head bent like she'd just climbed out of water. The picture glitched and froze. I ran down there again. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to believe it. When I turned the corner, the hallway was empty. The footprints were gone. The door to 2A was open, but the room was dark. I shined the flashlight inside. The desks were arranged in perfect rows now. I could see writing on the blackboard. The chalk was still falling as if someone had just finished. The words said, "Stay out." The radio on my belt turned on by itself. A burst of static filled the hall. Under it, I heard a soft sound breathing, then a laugh. High, quiet, and wrong. I turned to leave, and standing by the stairwell was the same girl I saw on the screen. Her skin was pale gray, her hair dripping like she'd been in rain. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder. She took one step toward me, leaving a wet mark on the floor. I froze. I couldn't move. She raised her head, and I saw her eyes black, hollow, not shining, just empty. When she opened her mouth, water spilled out, trickling down her chin. Then everything was a blur. I didn't remember walking back. I just found myself in the security room, my hand still holding the flashlight, shaking. The next thing I remembered was was hearing another voice, but it wasn't from the radio. The guard from the front gate was standing in front of me, shaking my shoulder. He told me he found me sitting on the floor, staring blankly at nothing, still holding the flashlight. He said he'd been calling me for a while because he heard shouting on the radio, like I was yelling for help. When I didn't respond, he came inside to check. He said he found me a few steps away from room 2A, pale and shaking, the radio still clipped to my belt and working normally like nothing had happened to it. At 6, when the head guard came, I gave him the keys and said I quit. He looked at me and the other guard, who is now preparing to leave. Then he asked me, "Did you see her?" I didn't answer. He nodded anyway and said he had heard stories about a girl people sometimes saw in the West Wing. He said she walks the halls when it rains. That was the last night I ever worked there. Later that morning, while I was signing the last page of the logbook, he said something I still remember. During your interview, I asked if you get scared easy or believe in things like that. Then he smiled a little and said, "Anyone can be a guard, but not everyone can be the night guard at the school." Tiny Wa Story 2. The Man by the Culvert. This happened to me in the summer of 1986. I grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota. It was a quiet place surrounded by fields and trees. Back then, nights felt longer, and there wasn't much to do. That's how it started. Four friends looking for something to escape the boredom. Me and my friends live in a small town with one grocery store and 2 gas stations, with a few streets that went quiet after dark. Most nights there was nothing to do. I spent time with 3 friends, Eli, Mark, and Jamie. We were the kind of teens who stayed out late. We drove around because there was nowhere else to be. John is me. I try to think before I do things. Eli pushes everything too far and laughs at his own ideas. Mark acts in charge and hates backing down. Jamie hangs back and goes along because he does not want to be the one left out. Our nights were all the same. We met at the grocery store parking lot after it closed. We sat on the hood of the car and talked about nothing. We watched the same 2 patrol cars loop the same streets. When the clerk turned off the last light, we drove around the empty roads playing the same songs. We pulled into lots and left again. Normal small town stuff. One night around 4 in the morning, we were half awake in the lot. The air was cold and the streets were empty. We were about to call it and go home. Then Eli said we should check out the big culvert out by the service road on the edge of town. He said some kids from another school had gone there once and heard something. Mark said we should go right then. Jamie said he did not want to go. It was almost morning and we were all tired. I said we should do it the next night, tomorrow after dinner when we were clear-headed. They agreed and that was the plan. The next day felt slow. I kept thinking about that culvert. It was the big one that runs under the road that leads to the old grain bins. The culvert had been built back in the 1950s. When they first paved that stretch of road, by then it was already stained and cracked, half buried in weeds. flats. The ditch there is wider than the others. The concrete is old. The culvert opening is tall, enough for a person to crouch and move through. I had driven past it 100 times and never thought about going inside. We met at 7 that evening. There's still light in the sky, but fading. We grabbed a flashlight from the trunk and a cheap headlamp that barely held a charge. We took my car because it had the most gas. We drove out of town and turned onto the service road. Fields on both sides and a few stands of trees. One old barn. No houses close by. No other cars. When we reached the culvert, we pulled onto the shoulder and parked. There was no wind. The water in the ditch moved slow. The grass around the opening was flattened. There were beer cans and an old tire there. We stood by the car for a minute to see if anyone else was around. When everything was clear, we climbed down the slope. As we got closer, I saw a man across the road near the far side of the ditch. He was standing still. His head was bent a little. I raised my hand to point him out. When the others looked, he was gone. I scanned the ditch and the road. There was no one there. Eli laughed and said I was seeing things. Mark said I'm just trying to scare them. Jamie said he did not see anyone. I kept staring at the spot where I had seen him. I tried to explain what I saw. No one took it seriously. At the mouth of the culvert, there was a small bouquet lying on the concrete. The stems were wrapped in plastic. It looked fresh. It has no card, no ribbon, just flowers. Jamie said we should leave it alone. Eli stepped on it with his heel and twisted it into the grit. He smirked and asked if we were scared yet. I told him to knock it off. He shrugged. We turned on the flashlight and the headlamp and stepped inside. The sound changed right away. Water ran through the center channel. The floor had a strip of thin water down the middle and dry ledges on both sides. The ceiling was low, that we had to keep our heads down. The air smelled like wet concrete and old mud. There was a faint smell of something rotten deeper in. We moved slowly. Our shoes scraped. The light bounced on damp walls. The entrance behind us got smaller. We passed old graffiti, and some words scratched into the wall. We saw a pair of rusted nails stuck in a seam. We saw a dead raccoon against the side, half sunk. The smell got stronger. We covered our noses with our sleeves. After about 30 meters, the light from the entrance was gone. The flashlights and the headlamp was only our light now. The water sound was steady. Somewhere ahead of us, there was a hollow drip. It came and went. Our headlamp flickered. Mark told Eli to stop messing with it. Eli said he was not touching it. We found footprints in the wet strip that were not from us. They were older but clear. The footprints faced deeper inside and they were bare. We stopped and looked at each other. Mark said someone could have been here during the day. Did not explain the shape of them. The toes were wrong. They looked narrow and long. I did not want to talk about that. We kept going. None of us wanted to be the first one to quit. My heart was moving fast. I counted my steps to keep my head straight. 20 steps, then 20 more. The flashlight started to dim. I shook it and it brightened for a moment, and then dimmed again. We all knew we had to turn back soon or we would be in the dark. Then we heard a clear step on the dry ledge ahead. It was a single step, but it made all of us froze. We listened, another step. It was slow, one foot and then the other. It came from the right side ahead. We aimed the light there, the beam shaking. We saw a man standing on the ledge about 10 meters away. He was turned toward the back of the culvert. He wasn't facing us, but I knew he knew we were there. He was thin with muddy clothes and he looked soaked. His arms were down at his sides. We could not see his face. The air suddenly felt colder. Mark said we should ask if he needed help. No one spoke. I tried to call out, but I was scared. The man did not react. He did not turn. He did not move at all. He just stood. We did not hear him breathing. We did not see the water change around his legs. Eli took a small step forward and the beam shook again. The man turned then. He turned slow until he faced us. We all saw it. His face was frightening. There were no eyes where eyes should be. There were dark holes. His skin looked waterlogged and pale. There was no expression. His mouth opened, and water flowed out of it in a steady stream. The stream splashed against the ledge. The sound was loud. We all moved at once. We turned and shoved each other and started back toward the entrance. The light slipped in my hand and hit the floor and spun. Jamie pulled me forward. Eli shouted that he dropped the headlamp. Mark said to leave it and keep running. Behind us, we heard his steps following us. It's getting faster now. I did not turn, but Jamie did. I heard him gag and swear under his breath. He shouted, "Don't stop, keep running." We saw the light ahead. We were nearing the entrance. The steps behind us kept moving. Then it suddenly stopped. I thought he stopped chasing, but we heard a new sound. It was a slow scrape on the wall at shoulder height. It moved along the right side toward us. We saw a hand dragged across the concrete. We saw long marks appear in the damp. They were as high as the top of the wall. We burst out of the culvert and climbed the slope. We slid on the dirt and grabbed at the grass. When we reached the top, we ran to the car. I pulled the keys and dropped them. My hands were shaking. Mark snatched them and unlocked the car. We got in and slammed the doors. No one spoke, panic written on our faces. I turned the key and the engine did not start the first time. It caught on with the second turn. The headlights lit the culvert's entrance. In the beam, we saw a man standing just inside the mouth of the culvert. He was not moving. He was facing us again. We can clearly see him now. That was the first time I felt so frightened. His clothes were wet and torn. We saw him open his mouth like he was trying to scream. No sound came out, only water. Steady streams of mud spilling down his chest. The stream did not slow. It did not stop. I quickly put the car in gear and drove. We did not look back. We did not speak until we reached the first set of houses. Eli said he should not have stepped on the flowers. No one answered. I dropped them off one by one and went home. I sat in the car with the engine off and tried to slow my breathing. The next day, we met at the lot during daylight. No one wanted to talk first. We agreed to go back out there once more while the sun was up. We drove to the culvert. We parked on the shoulder again. The slope had our footprints from the night before. The flattened bouquet was still there. That there were new flowers on top of it. The plastic looks new, yet there was no note. We looked inside from the edge, but did not go in. There were wet lines on the walls where he dragged his hand as he chased us. The lines were higher than any of us could reach without climbing. They ran along the right side and then down toward the water channel. There was a wet patch on the floor near the mouth where the water had pooled and drained. The headlamp we dropped was not there. We did not see the man again. Mark said we should tell someone. Jamie said no one would believe us. I said we should leave it alone. Eli nodded and did not make a joke. I had never seen him that quiet. We did not go out that night. We did not go out the next. A week passed. We met at Jamie's place. No one talked about the culvert. We stopped driving that service road and stuck to the main streets. When the lot closed at night, we went home early. We did not say why. One evening, I had to take that route because of a detour. I told myself not to stop, just keep driving. When I reached the culvert, I did not slow down. I glanced once and saw a man standing on the ledge inside the culvert. Even though I couldn't see his face, I knew it was him. I kept my eyes forward and drove until I reached the next town. After that, we made a rule. None of us would go near that culvert again. If a ride took us close, we turned around. If someone else wanted to see it, we told them to grow up and make another spot to waste time. We did not give details. We did not want to hear ourselves say it out loud. Months later, I drove past in daylight. Someone had set a small white cross on the slope by the entrance. A few flowers were there too. The slope had new grass. The water in the ditch was low. The opening looked harmless. Then I kept going. This is the part people always press on. They ask what I think it was. I keep the answer simple. It was a man who got swept in that culvert and never got out. I think it was during a flood. Maybe he got stuck and ran out of air. I think the culvert keeps him in. And those flowers are from someone who still remembers him. I think the marks on the wall are his hand, pulling himself along the ledge again and again. There is nothing else to say. What matters is we went in and we saw him. We made it out and we do not go back because we never want to see him again. The man by the culvert. Daisanwa, Story 3. The house near the tracks. This happened to me in the small town of Mounds, Illinois. It was 1986, back when the Illinois Central tracks still ran past the river bridge. There was a small town down south where everyone knew everyone. It was the kind of place where you heard the same church bell every morning and the same train whistle at night. Life simple, quiet, predictable. Right past the bridge and close to the old train tracks stood a 2-story house. White paint, half peeled, roof rusting at the edges. People said it was cheap to rent. Nobody stayed long. For a while, it was empty. The grass grew tall. Kids walking home from school crossed to the other side of the road when they passed it. They said the lights came on by themselves sometimes, even when no one lived there. One summer, a man named Leo moved in. He worked at the local factory that made machine parts. Quiet man, kept to himself. Every morning, he walked the same route to work with a metal lunchbox and a faded blue cap. The first few weeks went fine. Neighbors saw him mowing the yard, fixing windows, even painting the front door. He looked like he was settling down. But soon, people noticed he looked different, tired, pale. At the factory, his coworkers said he sometimes stared at nothing for minutes. When they asked if he was okay, he just nodded. He said the house was noisy at night, not with people, but with footsteps, slow and heavy ones that started at the bottom of the stairs and stopped just before his bedroom door. They told him maybe it was rats or pipes. He said it wasn't. He said he could feel weight on the floorboards. One night he heard crying upstairs. Soft, almost like someone trying to hold it in. He went up, thinking maybe someone had broken in. The door to the spare room was half open. Inside, nothing but old wallpaper and an open window. He closed it and left. After that, he started sleeping at a friend's place across town. When he went back, a few days later to grab his things, the front door was open. Inside, every chair, table, and box was stacked neatly in the kitchen. Not thrown around, not broken, just piled up like someone was clearing space. He packed his bag, locked the door, and left town before sunrise. The house stayed empty again for months, until a family moved in. A husband, wife, 2 kids. They came from another province, said they wanted a quiet life. They painted the walls, put curtains, even fixed the garden. For a while, everything seemed fine. They lived there for about 2 months. The neighbors thought maybe whatever was in that house was gone. The first sign came from the kids. The youngest, he told his mother that someone kept knocking on his window at night. She told him it was just the train wind, but she checked anyway. There were small handprints on the glass. A few nights later, the father heard something drop in the kitchen. When he went down, he found a chair pulled out and the refrigerator door open. He blamed the kids, but they were asleep. Weeks passed, and more things started happening. Footsteps at midnight, the sound of the back door creaking, even though it was locked. The smell of smoke in the hallway with no fire anywhere. The mother said she saw someone standing near the top of the stairs one night, tall, still, just watching. When she blinked, it was gone. She didn't tell her husband at first. Then one morning, they woke up to find the front door wide open and muddy footprints leading from the porch to the stairs. The husband checked outside, but there were no footprints beyond the porch, like whoever made them had appeared and vanished right there. After that night, he tried to ignore it. He said they couldn't just keep moving. They had already paid rent and spent money fixing the place. But things got worse. The youngest boy started talking to someone in his room. When his mother asked who it was, he said it was a woman who sat on the floor and asked where her children were. The mother prayed every night after that. She stopped letting the kids sleep alone. One evening, the husband came home from the factory. When he reached the front door, he saw the living room light flickering through the window. He saw someone sitting in his chair, facing the wall. He thought it was his wife. He walked in and found the chair empty. He called out, but nobody answered. Upstairs, his wife was with the kids. They had not moved from the bedroom all evening. 2 days later, the family went to stay with relatives. They came back once, only to pack. When they opened the front door, the air smelled burnt. The furniture they had moved in was all pushed to one side again, stacked in the same way Leo's had been. They left before sunset and never came back, leaving a note to the landlord explaining everything. For a long time, no one lived there. The landlord could not find tenants. I worked late shifts, and sometimes on my way home, I saw the upstairs light flicker. Sometimes it was steady. Sometimes it blinked, like someone walking back and forth in front of it. One winter evening, the landlord asked me to help him check the pipes. It was freezing outside. We went in before dark. The house was colder inside than out. It smelled like wet wood. We walked through with flashlights. Most of the furniture was gone, but there were still a few chairs stacked in the corner. Upstairs, the wallpaper peeled, and the floor bowed in the middle. One window was stuck half open. I touched the sill. The wood felt warm. That did not make sense. In a house that cold. On the way down, we heard a step above us. Slow, one board at a time. Then silence. We stood still for a moment. Then the landlord said we should go. We left the lights on and locked the door. Outside, the air felt lighter. I remember that part clearly. After that, I stopped walking that road after dark. The trains still passed, and sometimes their light caught the windows. When it did, I thought I saw someone standing behind the curtain. In spring, a trucker rented the place. He parked his rig by the porch. He stayed 1 week and left. He said he heard crying upstairs, but would not go check. He did not even ask for his deposit back. A young couple moved in next. They said they heard knocking under the floor, like someone was moving around below them. They stayed 4 nights. I saw them load their car before the sun came up. The woman looked pale. The man kept looking over his shoulder. By summer, the paint peeled again. Weeds grew up past the steps. One night, it rained hard. I had to walk home, and the storm forced me to stand under that porch for cover. I could hear the train far off, and the rain hitting the roof. Then I heard steps inside, slow, steady, like someone walking toward the front door. The floor creaked one board at a time until it stopped right behind the door. I moved off the porch and waited. Nothing happened. The door did not open, but I knew someone was standing there. I could feel it through the wood. The landlord tried to fix it again that fall. He put in new locks and painted the porch. A week later, the front door was open, and the paint on the handle was rubbed off, like someone had been turning it from inside. One day I saw a man in a brown coat standing at the porch. He had a tool bag, looked like a worker or a new renter. I saw him again the next morning, sitting on the steps with his head down. The truck was gone by sunset. No one saw him leave. After that, nobody stayed longer than a few days. Travelers, drifters, workers. It did not matter. Everyone left. Sometimes teens dared each other to go inside. They always came out quiet. One boy said he heard someone breathing near his ear when he was upstairs. They never went back. The years went on. The house kept standing. The roof sagged more each winter. The porch leaned. The yard grew wild. The upstairs curtains stayed open. Sometimes the light still came on. The train whistles still passed through town. And every time it did, you could hear the boards creak inside the house. The sound started in the back room, moved to the stairs, and stopped at the top step. Always the same order, always the same pace. People said it was the wind, or that the foundation shifted when the trains passed. Maybe they were right, but I knew the sound of footsteps. I had heard enough of them in my own house to tell the difference. The steps make a different kind of pause, like the person knows where they are going to stop. The house is still standing by the tracks. The porch leans lower every year. The paint is gone. The roof leaks. Locals say at night you can see the upstairs curtain move, like someone is looking out. If you walk close enough to the tracks, you can hear footsteps on the wooden floor, slow and careful, stopping just before the door. No one stays there long, on the house, near the tracks.
Thanks for keeping me company tonight. The story sounds better, whispered by the fire, don't they? Until we meet again. This is
Whispers of the Scribe.
If you enjoyed tonight's story and would like to keep the fire burning, please support me by buying me a coffee. Every cup fuels me to keep whispering here by the fire. If you have a story of your own, something you've never told, something that still follows you at night, send it to me at whispersofthescribe@gmail.com. Maybe one day
we'll whisper it here by the fire.